state operating subsidies. So basically, 30% of Act 44 is based on performance. However, that's more so on service volume and not really on cost efficiency. So if you guys look at like the last page, you'll see that comparison of the cost efficiency of Port Authority in terms of cost, and then also in terms of funding, compared to other similar peer transit service agencies. And as you can see, we're sort of lagging behind. A lot of this is because of the legacy issues that those add costs to our per vehicle, per mile, per seat, cost effectiveness. But nonetheless, it's something that sort of needs to be addressed within Port Authority. So the idea, it'd be a nice idea to include within any type of future legislation the possibility of having the Act 44 be more driven on cost performance, on long-term cost performance, cost effectiveness, and not so much on historical funding levels, which is sort of where it is right now at 70%. The idea is that by enacting this in the legislation, that Port Authority in the long term will become more cost effective, will be driven to be more cost effective, bringing their costs down, and then eventually or essentially with time, if there was funding cuts or there was things like that, that they could handle that, because obviously they'd be bringing their costs down every year more and more. The other thing that I was going to mention was that right now, the way it stands, the Port Authority board members are appointed by Allegheny County Executive. It makes sense, since a good amount of money that comes from Port Authorities from the state, that there should be some type of state representation on the board of Port Authority. And the idea behind this is to really, in terms of funding, in terms of decision making, and especially accountability, to make sure that these things are aligned, especially with the fact that some of this funding is coming from the state. Lastly, let me see here. By the way, I have a question. How many of you guys were able to go to the open house, the public transit open house last week? Anybody? No. Okay. Well, that would have been nice to. I mean, I thought it was a little peculiar that it was scheduled during. So basically, this happened last Monday, March 7th. How many of you were aware of this? One, two as of yesterday. So I thought that was a little interesting. I feel like this is something that affects a lot of students, but then again, it was planned during recess or spring break for Carnegie Mellon and Pitt. I'm not sure other schools if you guys had spring break as well, but I thought that was a little peculiar. So let me see here. So I did want to talk about one of these potential supplemental legislation topics here. That's on the next page. So very recently, and by very recently I mean last week, we had a bill come out. It's House Bill number 3, which is basically trying to address the Port Authority issue, and more so just overall Pennsylvania transportation issue in terms of funding, especially because of Act 44 and the fact that there's a shortfall which is projected for many years that they had anticipated. The idea behind House 3, and actually I'm going to pass this around. I actually have one for each school, but if we have enough, we might be able to give everybody maybe one or two. So basically, here's the bill that they're trying to, that just came out of the House and Transportation Committee. I'm sorry, the House Transportation Committee. And the idea behind the bill is to did every table get one? Yeah? Okay. So let me see here. So the idea behind the bill is basically that concept of public-private partnership, or P3 as they're starting to refer to it as. And let me see here. So this is being sponsored by Representative Rick Geist. He's the majority, I believe he's the majority chair for the Transportation Committee in the House. And the idea behind this is for this to be like a small step. I wouldn't say a small step because it's a big step, but it would be a starting point to the solution of this funding, transportation of all of Pennsylvania shortfall. So the idea behind public-private partnerships, and you guys can read there a little bit, is basically a partnership between government and private companies to take care and operate some of these, highways and infrastructures as well as transit systems, depending on the viability and the feasibility. There's a lot of positive things about public-private partnership, and there's obviously there's some some not so positive things. But currently, as it stands, there's 28 states and Puerto Rico that have enacted laws like this to really take into account the need for infrastructure to be basically the lack of funding that exists at the public level, at the government level for a lot of the infrastructure needs. So this is a good start. I would say that this is not the total solution that we were looking for, but the idea is that it's great that it's one of the first bills of this new term, and basically the idea is that if we can, when we go out to Harrisburg, we can sort of support this bill and just support just give our support for this type of legislation to really address the issue as quickly as possible. Obviously trying to be thorough, but nonetheless trying to promote, imminent, quick action. And obviously talking to our representatives and legislators about basically pursuing other, having this be the first step, but then also looking to, future and hopefully soon other legislation which would address the transportation issue. I guess that's sort of. Oh, and I guess if you guys turn to the next page, I just outlined the House and Senate Transportation Committee, so you can have an idea of who's on the committees. I think that was also provided, but this also, I guess, this gives you an idea of also the hierarchy in terms of who's who in these committees, and I guess that's it for your reference for that day. So with that said, I'm curious to know if you guys have any questions or any comments about just everything I just mentioned, and then also if you guys have any questions in particular about Harrisburg and just what type of topics you want, or just how to approach. I think we're going to be talking about it a little bit later, but I guess if anything, just on what I talked about, any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, our legislators, are they usually appreciative of lobbyists?
So that's an interesting question. So I would say that they're appreciative of their constituents coming out to meet and talk to them. I was recently in DC for something similar, and you'd be surprised. They actually do want to sit down and talk to you, and they appreciate the fact that you took your trip or woke up at 6:30 to try to meet them just to talk about what it's important to you, and you'd be surprised. So I mean, I would say that I would tell you guys to not consider yourselves lobbyists for that day. Just consider yourselves interested in and express constituents of their constituency. Go ahead.
Are you aware of what's happened within the past 24 hours between town council and court?
That's an interesting question. I feel like you should be up here. I'm not aware, actually. Could you go ahead and...
All right, because I've been very involved with this.